Hello, so this is going to be our last video for day one, and I'm going to solve another example, compound interest rating. So a customer wants to develop an application that would calculate the total amount she would make at the end of her investment, given the principal, period, and annual interest rate. So the principal is it's in normal numbers, plus the formula is total amount is equal to the principal into bracket 1 plus the rate per annum, so that will be in percentage, so we divide it by what, 100, then bracket close, all raised to the power time in years, which is the period, so 2 years, 3 years, or it could be 0.5, meaning 6 months, half of a year. Okay, so this is our equation. Okay, so let's see how we can write a Python script to solve this equation. So quickly we zoom in. So first, let us focus on this one. Maybe let's call it in brackets or something. This part, let's focus on this part. Okay, so when we come here to our VS Code, let us create a file for tutor example 2.py. So you can join our bootcamp class. This is how we are making all our videos and learn more about Python programming. This is just a short advert I'm doing. So let's get back to business. So we are trying to replicate this formula. Okay, we're trying to replicate this formula in our code here. Okay, so the first thing you have to do is your algorithm. It's always important. When I started programming, I don't like writing an algorithm. But later on, I got to realize that it's the most important thing ever to do as a programmer. So we have algorithm. Now, what will be our step one? The first step is to take what, inputs. Okay, so take inputs. And by taking input, what inputs are we taking? So what input are we taking? When we look here, we have the principal, we have the rate, and we have the time. So we are going to take in what? The principal. We are going to take in the rate. Let me put each of them on the next line. So the rate, okay, then we have the time, and for us, what the time will be, it could be floats or integers, so let's accept floats. Okay, then the rate is also in percentage, so the rate will usually come as a percentage, let's say 80%. Okay, so but definitely could come 85.4%, so it still floats. Okay, then the principal could come in as also floats. So we have all our data as what? Floats. Okay. But then the input itself is coming in as a string. So we have to convert them into these float data type. Now for step 2, we have to write the expression in Python. But we can solve it like this way. We can say first we solve the one in brackets. So solve, it's to my own discretion. You can solve all of them together, you can break them down, but I'm doing the breakdown for people to understand. So solve in brackets first, like solve in brackets. Okay, so we want to solve the one in brackets first, then we solve, then when we are done, we solve for the entire thing. So solve for your final answer, solve for final answer. Okay, so I've broken it down into 2 steps. So then I go to my step 3. Step 3, for my step 3, I just print the answer, print the result. Okay, so now let us start writing the codes. So let me say coding time. Okay, now this algorithm, I'm able to write them off head because I've been doing this over and over again. Okay, so but sometimes you may meet a problem and it can take you some time, some days to write out. And it's very helpful when you actually write out the data types, because if I know this is coming in as a float, then when I'm writing down my expression, I know how to handle them. Okay, so if you don't write them like this and you're dealing with a very large application, you realize that you get to some point and you realize that, oh, the data you are working with is actually in strings, but you needed it in floats. And you have to go back and change it. And you realize that once you change it, because you were using it as a string before, it will also affect other parts of the code, and you keep on being in that loop. So your algorithm clears out all those confusion. So this data type is in this format, and I'm using it this way, and this is how I'm using throughout the code, making it simple and easy and straightforward. So let's start writing the code. So we start with step one. So with our step one, we say we are taking in inputs, right? We are taking in 3 inputs. One of them is what? The principal. And the principal, we want it as what? A float. Then we say input, maybe what is your principal? What is your principal? Something like this. Then the next one, we are taking in the rate. Okay, so we say float, we convert into a float, and we say input. So what is the bank's rating in percentage? In percentage. Okay, so we don't want the person to input, instead of 80%, the person input 0.8, which is the same, but then because we are going to be dividing by 100, so we need it in the full percentage so that we can convert it into those decimal. Or you can ask the user to enter it directly into the decimal, and in that case it's just 1 plus the rate. Okay, then we have the time, or let's say period, is equal to the float and input. Okay, input, then we say maybe enter the period. Okay, so this, all these things being said, but remember, sometimes the user may enter any kind of data and we have to take care of that. So we can use our what? Try this. Okay, try doing this. Now in case it fails, okay, except this. So print please enter the appropriate values. Okay, then when it's done with this, it should what? Exit from the app, so that we don't. So once we are done writing this, your cursor shouldn't be here. If it is still here, it means it's under the except function, and it will only run if the exception is running. But when you bring it out, it no longer belongs to this. Okay, so we've brought the cursor outside of the indentation, so it's no longer under the try and except function. Okay, so let us look at, we are done with step one. Now let's look at step two. So with our step two, solve in brackets. We want to solve the one in brackets first. Okay, so the one in brackets is saying 1 plus rate divided by 100. So in brackets, underscore brackets is my variable name, so I can say 1 plus the rate divided by 100. Okay, 1 plus rate divided by 100. Board master applies. Now if you are confused whether the computer is going to do the division and add 1 to it, or the computer is going to add rate plus 1 and do the division, you can put brackets around them. Okay, so you say, okay, computer, do rate divided by 100 first, then after that add it to 1. Fine, it still doesn't spoil anything, it just sometimes makes you feel sure and certain. Okay, then the next thing is to multiply the one in brackets by the principal and raise the one in brackets to a power. Okay, so let's say our answer will now be the principal times the in bracket, and then bracket is raised to the power asterisk what? The time, the period. Okay, so this is it. If you are not too sure, you can put a bracket here around them. So you are saying that the in bracket should be raised to a power, and whatever value you get, it should be multiplied by the principal. Okay, so you can put a bracket around it just to make you feel more certain about your calculations. Then I will go to the last step, step 3, which gives us print the results. Okay, so we are to print out the results. So we say print answer. Okay, and now let's see if our code works. But I want to mistakenly make a mistake. Yes, I want to mistakenly make a mistake so that I will help you correct it later. So let me do this. Let me do that. Let me do this. Okay, so there are some number of mistakes. Sometimes your code may have a lot of mistakes. Okay, not only one mistake. So let us run our code. Now I don't need this part. So let us run our code and see. So what's the principal? Let's say 2,000 Ghana cedi, 20,000 Ghana cedi. What's the bank's rating in percentage? So let's say 80%. Then it says please enter the appropriate value. But 80% is the appropriate value. So what caused this to run? So you see that this is in the except column, and I'm saying that if something fails here, automatically this one runs. It doesn't mean if the user enters only the wrong data. Now, if you can see, something should fail here. So the question is, what failed here? So you can come to the debugger, run and debug. When you click on it, you click on run, and let's see which one failed in there. I know you can see some zigzag lines underlined over there, but let's see. So let's say 20,000, we press enter. The percentage is 80%, we press enter. Oh, I should have put the red dot. Okay, the red dot is here. The red dot is called breakpoint. Okay, so take note of the breakpoint. So the computer has run this line and we put in 20,000, 21, 2, 3. Okay, now it's about to run the rate. You say, okay, carry on, run the rate. The rate came out perfectly. Then we say 80. Now if you can see, the principal is 20,000, the rate is 80, everything is perfect. But we got to the time and we ran it. Now there was an error at the time. That's why I jumped to accept. It didn't show us the input and stuff like that. So it means that the time is the one that is faulty. And when you keep on running it, once the time is faulty, it runs the exception part, which is please enter the appropriate values. We said appropriate value because we are assuming that the only time the code will fail is when the user enters the wrong value. But in this case, the code failed because we failed to put the correct spelling for float. So that is the problem here. Okay. But sometimes you can remove the exception so that you can see the actual error. Okay. So that being done, now let us run it again and see how it works. So we have 20,000, 1, 2, 3, and we press enter. We have the rate, which is 80. We press enter, and we have the time, and now the time is in. So period, let's say 5 years. So it's jumped over the except because everything here worked well and came to step 2. Now we are trying to calculate this. When I run it, it gives an error. Rat says that the name rat is not defined. So the not defined means that the variable name rat does not exist before this point. So is there anything called rat here before the point? Oh, we're trying to spell rate and we spelled rat. So let me change it to what? Rate. Okay, then let me start all over again. Okay, so we run it. So sometimes you can have a multiple error. and you have to do it step by step as a beginner. Then the rate is 80%, but which bank gives 80%? Well, then the period is 35 years. Then inside the bracket, it performs the calculation correctly. So now inside the bracket value is what? 1.8. Now the next thing we are solving here is the final answer. So the principal times the inside the bracket value times raise to the power of the time. So the next, it gives us an error. It says name error. Name bracket is not defined, meaning that the value do not exist before that. This name bracket doesn't exist anywhere. So you can see that the in underscore bracket was omitted. So the only way to correct this is to bring it back, because brackets and in underscore brackets is different. So in brackets, this is the correct variable name. Yes. So now let's start all over again. Now we run this, then we press and we type in 20,000. Then we run the rate, then we press and we type in 80%, which is not realistic. Then we run the time, 5 years, and get here in brackets has been solved, 1.8, and the principal, the final answer is 377,913.6 something something something, and we print the final answer. Okay, but the final answer, we feel like the final answer is too lengthy for us, and usually currencies comes in 2 decimal places, so we can say round answer to 2 decimal place, so 2 decimal place. Okay, so as you can see, we'll round our answer to 2 decimal places and print it out. So now instead of doing the debugging, now you come here to do your debugging, but once you feel like everything is correct, you can close it and you can delete this one, delete it again, and the only thing, you just need to run it from here. Okay, so once I run it, it says 20,000, 80%, then 5 years, then gives us 2 decimal place. The next number is a 0, so it's just omitted it. Okay, and we've gotten our answer. You can remove your breakpoint now, and our code is working fine. So use this systematic approach. Think through your algorithm. Once you are done, before you start writing the codes, then use the debugging method to clear out all the errors within the code. So see you next time. Bye. You can join our bootcamp. We always have it from time to time. Contact us on kobnaedu@10@gmail.com. I'll put the email on the screen so that in case you want to contact us in the future, you can get to us. Bye.